Hello, YouTube, and welcome back to another talk by me on this new moon in Cancer. I don't know if I have officially introduced myself. My name is Sandra, and I am an up and coming astrologer. And I love to talk about all things astrology. That's kind of listed, I know, in my little description box if you watch my channel. But off to better and bigger and better things. I love to talk about lunations, and so you probably will see me pop on here about twice a month to talk about um, new moons and full moons. I just think it's so cool. It's a great way to not only talk about the lunations that are happening, but as well talk about other astrological events that are happening in the cosmos as well. And some of them are centered around these moons and influencing these lunations, as well as other planetary um, movements that are causing other things that perhaps, we may or may not be aware of. I would like to think usually people who enjoy astrology love watching other astrology videos. So I'm probably talking to people who love astrology, or love listening to astrology, or love dabbling in all things woo woo, right? But definitely also just love hearing about the moon cycles as well. So I am back with another video on nothing other than this new moon in Cancer. So I usually will do note cards. So if you see me looking down, it's just because I'm looking down to make sure I stay on track with everything that I would like to cover. Okay. So we will be having a new moon in Cancer on July 14th. It will be at 21 degrees and 59 minutes. So I'm just going to round it up to 22. It's like a minute off from being a 22 even degree new moon in Cancer. Um, and so I generally like to give my videos and my talks about the lunations a name or a theme. And so this one I am seeing as busy at home. Okay. The Cancerian energy deals with so much around the home, and, just the physical family. And just, it's summertime. We're spending a lot of time with our families. A lot of us, if we have children, our children are out of school. And so we really are, we're really busy at home, or it's usually when people take off, have vacations. And so the home life becomes very focal right now. The sun is in Cancer, the moon is in Cancer, hence new moon. So we have, the yin and the yang coming together at this new seeding point, the sun and the moon. And I tend to really I love the energy of new moons because it is, it's like this seeding point of newness. There are new beginnings. Maybe you are planting something new or starting something new with regards to the home or with regards to your family. Um, Either way, it is a starting point, and it is, new moons are usually a planting stage, and something that is new taking off, or maybe something new that's coming up that we can't fully see, as the moon is, it's, I call it also the dark moon. The new moons are, when the sun and the moon are together, so it appears as if there's no moon, but it's just because it's with the sun. And so you know there's perhaps maybe something that is seeding under there that we can't quite make out right now. We don't quite understand, or something new happening in our lives, perhaps in that Cancer area of your natal chart. Um, Maybe even in the Cancer area of the collective, of the world we live in, of our city, or just what have you, right? That our jobs that we are kind of watching, we're kind of like, oh, that's new, but soon it will, usually around the full moon, we are generally clearly able to see what everything was taking place in this location, right? So I'm theming this one busy at home, as we have both the sun and the moon. We have mom and dad at home, and we are taking care of so many different things around this time right now. The moon, let's see, well, we've already talked about that. The moon is conjunct the sun. I'm going to get into a little bit of what I see happening around this lunation, and sort of go from there, where I will break down sort of slowly and talk about, my thoughts and my beliefs and the astrology, of course, around this new lunation. Um, I also think, Jupiter, which was in Cancer, right, for this past, I don't know, maybe year and a half, and is now recently moved into Leo, starting a brand new cycle there for the next year or so. Has recently moved into Leo, I want to say at the beginning of July, or maybe I think the end of June. Anyways, it's very new in Leo, and I still consider it sort of, it's still kind of with the moon, because it's new and it's not that far off yet at this lunation. And so I think that the moon is able to perhaps feel some of the absorption from this newly um, moved Jupiter into Leo, which will be giving blessings and abundance, right? And stability, hopefully, in the Leo area of our charts right now, or in the collective. But either way, it is, I see it as sort of still with this lunation, as well as, you know, the sun is in Cancer and Jupiter is in Leo, which is where the sun wants to be, So, and the sun is with the moon. So, I think there's definitely this connection between the sun and the moon. As well as we still have Mercury there with, um, in Cancer. It's in retrograde, and it won't be turning direct until, I want to say, the end of July, like maybe around July 13th. Mercury will continue to go back direct again, but it is still in Cancer, and it is with the moon as well. So, um, with all of this happening, right, I definitely think and feel, okay, this is a feeling, the moon's in Cancer. That's another thing I can say, I guess. A moon in Cancer is at home. It's where, the feelings and the emotions and the nurturing and all the things the moon represent, right? The security, it's where it can most come alive. It's where it can most feel safe, because it is at home, and which is one of the reasons why I'm calling it busy at home, because it is a lot going on. It's the moon is responsible, I feel, for a lot at this lunation, as there's not a whole lot of aspects going on, but I think a lot of what is going on, the moon is giving sort of like it's security to, it's sense of stability to the things around it, the other planetary movements and planets and things like that. So it's going to be a heavy, responsible type feel, I think, around this time. Cancer has a lot of responsibilities around this time, a lot of moon-like feelings and nurturing to do, right? Especially, with our families. So luckily it's at home, right? Where else do we want to show up and be the moon, be the nurturer, be the one who, takes care of the family, provides for the family in a moon-like fashion, than in our home, where we know where everything is and, it's not out of place, and we can have that ability to feel safe and to feel secure. And that's what a moon in Cancer is here to offer us. So take full advantage of the energies around this time, as I feel you will come to see that, this is, we have a new moon in Cancer every year. Um, However, there are different aspects happening every year, so there's a different feel. But this particular new moon in Cancer, like I said, it's still sort of with Jupiter there. It has Mercury in retrograde with it. So there's quite a bit, that's going on at home. So in which, hopefully it can help us to feel a sense of security, knowing that. So moving on, I think a lot though is seeding under this new moon phase for perhaps us individually, um, a collective, our world. There's just so much going on in the world in today's time. Um, but definitely for a new moon in Cancer, I know I've been paying attention a lot to not only my own personal individual life and where this lunation is kind of going on, but also the media and seeing what's going on in the media. And you'll notice, like around this time, we start hearing about things going on in homes, or families. And um, it can be some things that are disturbing, to learn. And, especially with, I think, everything that's going on in our world today. But it definitely takes on a completely different feel around this time of year, as we are in our own homes and we are dealing with our own families and watching the world and deal with their homes. And the earth is our home, and what's going on on our planet. And so it really does come with, I think, a lot of you know things that we see and things that's going on. And it just, it really does kind of come back to home and what's going on with us and what's going on with the world. So um as I mentioned, perhaps we can't see it all yet. There's a lot unfolding, even in the media. When we learn about different stories or news stories, I know I have a couple of stories I'm following in the news, and it's all around families. And so it can be very interesting, a very interesting time. So, and a lot more will start to become visible, perhaps around the full moon, um, at the end of the month. I'm not exactly sure what date the full moon will be, but we will have, the full moon cycle of this new moon, and things will become more probably dead on in terms of what was seeding. So, um, you know, let's see here. What else did I put? Either way, what I'm feeling right now, I think, with everything, is family first. I probably feel this way often because I do have moon my moon, my moon sign is in a, you know, a prominent home where I definitely enjoy my family and I enjoy spending time with my family, and I almost feel like it is, you know, it is urgent almost to put my family first. It's without thought even sometimes. Um it just feels like what is natural for me to do. So either way, right now I'm feeling this sense of, you know, if you know your moon sign, you know what house your moon is in, and you can kind of see what's going on with your own personal moon or your Cancer house, you know, which is also, you know, around the family. Um, Family first, and everything else will work itself out, you know. And that's something that I really believe. That's something that I really feel, you know, like if we're nurturing our families, if we're taking care of our families, if we're taking care of home, right? Then we're able to kind of pour into other things, right? Um, so there is this sense, I think, around this new moon, and, you know, like this question even of, you know, where do my priorities lie? You know, where are my priorities right now? Are they elsewhere? You know, we don't have to know sometimes right off bat, but, you know, they're elsewhere. Let's just say that. And, you know, and you know, I think a Cancer new moon is needed because it definitely helps us to come back to home, come back to the foundation, right? Home is definitely a foundation for, you know, how we can move outwards and give to the rest of life. So, you know, definitely coming to the realization or even asking ourselves these questions of where do my priorities lie? What am I committed to? What am I, you know, pouring into my family right now? You know, and so a lot of that may even be seeding, or maybe it's, you know, something you're thinking about or you're ruminating on, and is, you know, will eventually come to a head at the full moon. But you know, if you have, I believe if you have been sowing your priorities in the right place, you know, then I feel this new moon will have less friction or tension on you. Um you know, I think that it, not to say that there's not going to be any tension that you feel, because there are aspects that suggest some tension, but, you know, I think that that's why I think I have that belief that if I'm pouring into my family, if I'm giving to, you know, my foundation, right, and making sure my foundation is nurtured and secure, then, you know, it's kind of like that story of when the storm comes, right? I'm, you know, it's, I'm able, my foundation is able to stay firm and strong, you know, in that. So there is definitely like that sense of that, or I think around this new moon in Cancer. Um, However, you know, there's always another side to this, you know. If you have neglected perhaps taking care of the home, right? And when I say home, you know, this can be our literal homes where we physically reside, or, you know, it could be figuratively. You know, the moon also represents our physical vessels, like us, our bodies are, you know, is a representative of the moon, of us. And so, you know, um, you know, I think we could feel a little bit more tension, you know, if we aren't taking care of our homes, you know, literally or physically, or figuratively, excuse me. You know, we can feel this sense of boy, I'm drained, or my health isn't doing so well, or, all these bills got behind, and, what have you. And so, I feel like at a new moon, we get to make a new start. We get to kind of check in with how we are doing around the areas of home. So, with that, there are aspects, as you probably could tell with how it's turning to the tension part of this. There are aspects, that are happening around this new moon that, maybe they don't feel as great right now. Saturn, right? The planet of you know, excluding or restricting or hard work, um, just prevention, just the hard planet. Saturn right now is going to be in a square aspect with this new moon. A square aspect is a aspect of tension. It's kind of the nature of Mars, and it brings about a feeling of kind of like fighting or strife or action, a lot of action, a lot of physical labor, with Saturn and Mars. um so it's going to be in this square, and it's going to be, possibly a square with the moon doesn't feel very well. There could be um things around the home. And like I said before, when I say the home, I mean our physical homes or our figurative homes, our bodies, that are possibly hard to deal with, health wise, or um just our physical homes, problems and situations happening there. Think more, I know I always think more of like Saturnian things, especially with Saturn squaring the moon, squaring our home, this new moon in Cancer. Um, just, issues with, finances. Saturn can very sometimes very physically rule, just that physical um sort of like stability, that foundation of having the finances and being able to take care of things, and put in the work and the hours, and is it all working out, at some point at the end of the day? Do I have enough? Did I get up this huge mountain of, trying to take care of everything? And so yeah, it can feel heavy, it can feel hefty, and you know possibly just sometimes overbearing. Saturn squaring the moon is not a easy feeling at all. So with that being said, you know uh things can feel quite physical, quite literally, maybe even painful. So I would just say check in with yourself, check in with your home. Know that, hopefully you have a way in which you can find some sort of relief, some sort of, you know, maybe just faith in that things are going to work out. Hope, and Jupiter, like I said, is kind of there. Maybe there's some sort of blessing that you can tap into to kind of offset some of the harsher aspects that's happening around this new moon. Mercury retrograding, perhaps, checking on, and you know following up with, Mercury rules, like our siblings, our extended families, aunts, uncles, cousins. even quite literally our vehicles, our cars and travel, sometimes even our friends. So, with Mercury retrograding, there is this period of, Mercury not being at its strongest, which is, our communication, our thoughts, our things around these areas can just feel like, in Cancer, just a lot of moody, watery mush. Okay. So checking in with these, possibly even, most literal our mothers, around this time, or maternal figures in our lives. Um could benefit from us knowing how they're doing, and what's going on with them, how they're, just, how they are weathering, life right now, in terms of, just life, really. That could be depending on how it's really touching down in their own personal charts. It could be many things, but definitely just checking in. It doesn't hurt, I think, ever. Especially at a new moon in Cancer, to check in with our families. Okay. So, with that, my friends, as mentioned before, we know that Jupiter is in Leo right now, as it's newly moved into Leo. One thing is, though, Jupiter is closing in on an opposition with Pluto in Aquarius. And so, I think it will perfect somewhere around July 20th, perhaps the 21st. I'm not exactly sure, but it at this new moon, it has started well before, a little bit before, just this engagement with this opposition. And this is a big deal. Well, you might ask, why is this a big deal? Why is Jupiter in Leo in an opposition with Pluto in Aquarius such a big deal? Well, this cycle is usually about a 12 to 13 year cycle. So it takes, a long time for these outer planets to kind of touch down with each other and start making aspects with one another. And so to have this come around, right now, which I don't think it's happened in about 12 or 13 years, is a big deal. If you can imagine where your life was 12 or 13 years ago, maybe that could pinpoint to some things, but it would just be a completely different energy, right? A completely different time. And so, um, ultimately, what I'm saying is that, you know, we are having sort of some groundbreaking energies that are coming together, and that seeding, with this new moon. We can't see all of what's going to happen or what's going to shake out, but like I said, by the full moon, which I think, when this opposition reaches the full aspect, the full close in on the exact aspect with one another, um, I think later a little bit later, then there will be a full moon that we will be having in the sign of Aquarius. So I think, we can definitely tell that we are definitely in some powerful times. And right now, checking in and, being busy at home, making sure we are trying to offset some of the tension or some of the things that we can't quite see that is seeding around this new moon, will be ultimately, hopefully, easier, to bear with whatever is coming or whatever is seeding around this time. So just keep that in mind. I personally feel Jupiter in Leo is wanting, as this new, Jupiter moving into Leo, after being in Cancer for a while, Jupiter in Leo is wanting to offer us security, and stabilization within our families, around this time, as it is in, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, in reception with the sun, and the sun is in Cancer. So I think that, that's something that Jupiter wants to offer. However, this opposition with Pluto in Aquarius, which Pluto in Aquarius is in retrograde right now, is wanting to sort of confront things on perhaps a larger scale. These are two opposing signs, Leo and Aquarius. Leo is more of like the individual, and Aquarius is like, everybody. It's the, it's the it's everyone, the community perspective in the world. And Leo could just be the family. So I look at, especially a retrograded Pluto in Aquarius, maybe looking at things around fears and compulsions or power struggles within the family. What, asking ourselves, what is controlling us? I think with Pluto, it can be a sort of like, especially retrograded, and we're, you know, there's a shadowy side to it, right? Some things we don't see that perhaps could be controlling us or sabotaging us in ways that we hadn't really, you know, thought about, or even, um, you know, really, leaned into, to think about. So where we need to come to terms with the fact that, um, you know, perhaps there are some things seeding, you know, maybe in discussion with the family or what have you. There are things that need a rebirth. I struggle to say a death, but maybe just a rebirth, maybe just a transformation has to happen in order for things to, come back alive again, to be fully, transformed and powerful. Pluto can be a very powerful energy. Yes, it has a shadow side and it can be a hard energy, but it can also be an energy for the best. It can be an energy that, where we look at things and we're like, wow, when I made this change, this full transformation in my home, my physical home, or with my physical self, or what have you, or with my job, or what have you, you know, everything changed. And, there was this great balance that occurred between, the family and everything else. So definitely looking at that, personal lives, family lives, balancing that out with the collective, and, you know, um, and just taking a deeper look, perhaps, at the shadow side of Pluto, So that is what I would like to share about this new moon. And if you watch my videos, um, first of all, thank you for watching my videos. And if you would like to comment about what you see perhaps this time is pointing to, or yeah, just, if you know a little bit about astrology, and perhaps you want to talk about, oh, this is happening in my second house of finances, and here is, sort of some things I'm, the seating for me. But otherwise, friends, I'm going to wrap this video up. And like I said, I will be back on here at the full moon in Aquarius in a few weeks, and we can sort of see how things went from there. So, thanks for staying this long if you've watched this video, and I just offer peace and love and abundance and all things good.